The suitcase hit the front porch with a thunderous crash, spilling Simone's belongings across the wooden planks like scattered dreams. Her wedding photo tumbled out, the glass cracking right down the middle between her smiling face and Derek's. "Get out!" Derek's voice boomed from the doorway, his dark eyes blazing with a fury she'd never seen before. "I trusted you, Simone. I loved you. And this is how you repay me." Simone stood frozen on her own front porch, still wearing her pink scrubs from the hospital where she'd just finished a 12-hour shift saving lives. Her hands trembled as she stared at the man she'd promised to love forever, the man who was now looking at her like she was a stranger. "Derek, please just listen to me." "Listen to what?" "More lies." He stepped closer, his construction boots heavy against the porch. "Jasmine told me everything, Simone. Everything. How could you steal from my family? How could you take money from my sick nephew?" The words hit her like physical blows. Simone's knees nearly buckled as the magnitude of the accusation sank in. "What money?" "Derek, I don't know what you're talking about." But Derek had already turned away, his broad shoulders rigid with betrayal. 3 years of marriage and I never knew who you really were." Across the street, Mrs. Carter was watering her garden, but Simone could see the older woman's concerned eyes watching the scene unfold. The shame burned hot in Simone's chest. This was their neighborhood, their community, and now everyone would know that Derek Turner had thrown his wife out like garbage. "The money for Malik's surgery," Derek said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. $5,000, gone from Jasmine's account right after you visited last week. She showed me the bank records, Simone. Your name is on the withdrawal slip." Simone's mind reeled. She remembered visiting Derek's sister last week to drop off a casserole when little Malik had been sick. But money? She'd never touched any money, had barely even stayed 20 minutes. "Derek, I swear on my mother's grave I never." "Don't." He held up his hand and she could see the pain beneath his anger. "Don't make this worse by lying to my face. Jasmine was crying so hard she could barely tell me. My nephew might not get his surgery because of what you did." The unfairness of it all crashed over Simone like a tidal wave. She thought about all the overtime shifts she'd worked to help pay their bills, all the time she'd cooked Derek's favorite meals after his long days, all the love she'd poured into their marriage. And now, with one lie from his sister, it was all crumbling. "Where am I supposed to go?" she whispered, looking at her belongings scattered on the porch. Derek's jaw tightened. "That's not my problem anymore." As he started to close the door, Simone's voice found its strength. "Derek Turner, I may not know why your sister is lying, but I know who I am. I know I didn't steal from your family. And someday when the truth comes out, you're going to have to live with this moment." The door slammed shut with a finality that echoed through the evening air. Simone stood there for a long moment, staring at the closed door of what had been her home just minutes ago. Then, with shaking hands, she began gathering her scattered belongings, piece by piece, as the first tears started to fall. Mrs. Carter appeared at her side without a word, helping to fold clothes and stack books. The older woman's presence was a silent comfort, a reminder that not everyone in the world had turned against her. "Thank you," Simone whispered. "Child," Mrs. Carter said softly, "I've been watching people for 67 years. I know a good heart when I see one. This storm ain't over yet." As the sun set behind the houses of their quiet street, Simone loaded her belongings into her car, not knowing where she would sleep that night, but knowing one thing for certain. She would find a way to prove her innocence, no matter what it took. Simone's car idled in the parking lot of the 24-hour diner on Peachtree Street, the neon sign casting a pink glow across her tear-stained face. She'd been sitting there for 2 hours, watching late-night customers come and go, trying to figure out where someone goes when their whole life disappears in a single evening. Her phone buzzed. Derek's name flashed on the screen. "Don't come back tonight. I need time to think." She stared at the message, her heart breaking all over again. Time to think about what? The evidence seemed clear to him. In his mind, she was a thief who had stolen from a sick child. Another text came through, this one from her supervisor at the hospital. "Heard about your situation. You're scheduled for a double tomorrow. Take care of yourself, Simone." Dr. Foster had always been kind, but how had word already gotten out? Simone realized with a sinking feeling that Jasmine probably hadn't kept quiet about her accusations. With nowhere else to go, Simone drove to her mother's house in East Atlanta. The small brick home where she'd grown up seemed smaller now, the porch light casting familiar shadows that should have been comforting but instead felt like a retreat into the past. Ruby Davis opened the door before Simone could knock, as if she'd been waiting. Her mother's warm brown eyes took in the suitcases, the tear-streaked face, and the broken posture of her daughter. "Come here, baby girl," Ruby said, opening her arms wide. Simone collapsed into her mother's embrace, finally allowing herself to sob. All the strength she tried to maintain on that porch, all the dignity she tried to preserve while packing her belongings, crumbled in the safety of her mother's arms. "Mama, he thinks I'm a thief," Simone cried. "Derek's sister told him I stole money meant for her son's surgery. $5,000, Mama. How could I ever steal from a sick child?" Ruby guided her daughter inside, settling them both on the familiar couch where Simone had done homework and shared dreams for so many years. The house smelled like the lemon pound cake her mother always made when life got tough. "Tell me everything," Ruby said, her voice steady and strong. "Every detail." Simone walked through the events of the past week. The visit to Jasmine's house with the casserole. The brief conversation about little Malik's upcoming surgery. The way Jasmine had seemed nervous, almost jittery, but Simone had chalked it up to worry about her son. "Did you touch anything while you were there? Sign anything? Use her bathroom?" Ruby asked, her years as a church organist having made her a careful listener to people's troubles. "I used her bathroom," Simone remembered. "And she asked me to wait in the kitchen while she got a container to send some leftovers home with me. But I never saw any money, never touched any papers." Ruby was quiet for a long moment, her fingers drumming against her knee the way they did when she was working out a difficult hymn arrangement. "Simone, baby, I've known that girl since Derek brought you home 3 years ago. Jasmine has always been jealous of you. The way Derek lights up when you walk in a room, the way you fit into our community, the respect you earned at that hospital. Some people can't stand to see others happy. But to lie about stealing from her own son's medical fund? What kind of person does that?" Before Ruby could answer, there was a soft knock at the door. Through the window, they could see Mrs. Carter standing on the porch, holding what looked like a covered dish. "That woman has been looking out for our family since before you were born," Ruby said, getting up to answer the door. Mrs. Carter stepped inside, her silver hair perfectly neat despite the late hour. "I brought some of my famous mac and cheese. Figured you might need some comfort food tonight." "Mrs. Carter, you didn't have to." "Hush, child. When someone in our community is hurting, we show up. That's how we've always done things." The older woman sat down across from Simone, her eyes sharp and kind. "Now, I've been thinking about what I saw tonight and I have some questions." Simone looked up, hope flickering in her chest for the first time since Derek had thrown her belongings on the porch. "I've lived across from you and Derek for 3 years," Mrs. Carter continued. "I've seen how you take care of that man, how you work double shifts to help with the bills, how you always speak to everyone in the neighborhood with respect. Doesn't add up that you'd suddenly start stealing from children. Derek doesn't see it that way. Derek is hurting and angry. Men sometimes can't see past their own pain to the truth right in front of them." Mrs. Carter leaned forward. "But I also know something else. I know Jasmine has been struggling financially since her baby daddy left. I know she's been asking people in the family for money. And I know desperate people sometimes do desperate things." Ruby and Simone exchanged glances. This was information they hadn't had before. "What are you saying, Mrs. Carter?" Simone asked. "I'm saying maybe the person who needed that surgery money wasn't the only one who had access to it. Maybe someone took it, but it wasn't you. Maybe someone needed Derek to believe it was you so he wouldn't look too close at the real truth." As the 3 women sat in Ruby's living room, a plan began to form. They would need evidence, witnesses, and proof. But most of all, they would need the kind of faith that had carried their community through harder times than this. "We're going to get your life back, baby girl," Ruby said, taking her daughter's hand. "But first you need to rest. Tomorrow we start fighting." For the first time in hours, Simone felt like she could breathe again. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Ruby's kitchen as Simone prepared for what might be the longest shift of her nursing career. She'd barely slept, her mind racing between hurt and determination. Today she would work her double shift, but she would also start gathering the truth. "You eat every bite of that breakfast," Ruby said, setting a plate of scrambled eggs and toast in front of her daughter. "You're going to need your strength." Simone's phone buzzed with a text from Derek. "I packed more of your things. They're on the porch." "No, good morning." "No, how are you?" Just cold efficiency like she was a stranger he was helping move out. "Don't you dare answer that," Ruby said, seeing the pain flash across Simone's face. "He's hurting, but that doesn't give him the right to hurt you." At the hospital, Simone threw herself into her work with an intensity that surprised even her. She checked on elderly patients, comforted worried families, and administered medications with the careful precision that had made her one of the most respected nurses on the floor. Work was the one place where she still felt like herself. During her lunch break, she sat in her car and called Derek's nephew's doctor's office. "Hi, this is Simone Turner. I'm calling about Malik Davis. I'm his uncle's wife, and I wanted to know about his surgery scheduling." "Oh, Mrs. Turner," the receptionist said warmly. "I remember you from when you came in with the family last month. Actually, Malik's surgery was moved up. It's scheduled for next week." His grandmother was able to get the funds together just in time. Simone's heart stopped. His grandmother got the funds together? Yes, she came in yesterday with a cashier's check for the full amount. Such a relief for the family, I'm sure. After hanging up, Simone sat in her car, pieces of a puzzle starting to form in her mind. If Jasmine's mother had paid for the surgery, then what happened to the money that was supposedly stolen? And why hadn't Derek mentioned that his mother had stepped in to help? Her phone rang. "Mrs. Carter. Simone, honey, you need to come by when you get off work. I've been doing some asking around and I think I found something important." "What kind of something?" "The kind that might help you get your husband back." That evening, Simone found Mrs. Carter sitting on her front porch with a young Hispanic man she didn't recognize. He looked nervous, his security guard uniform crisp and clean. "Simone, this is Tomas Rivera. He works security at the shopping center where Jasmine banks." "Tomas, tell her what you told me." Tomas cleared his throat, his English accented but clear. "Mrs. Turner, I remembered your face when Mrs. Carter showed me your picture. You came to the bank last week, yes?" I don't think so. I bank at a different branch across town." No, you didn't come to bank. You came with a woman, Jasmine. I remember because she was acting very nervous, looking around a lot. You waited by the door while she went to the counter." Simone's memory rushed back. After leaving Jasmine's house with the leftover casserole, Jasmine had asked if they could stop by the bank so she could quickly check her balance. Simone had waited by the entrance, scrolling through her phone. What did she do at the counter? Simone asked. She made a withdrawal. Big one. The teller had to count it twice. But here's the thing. Tomas looked around nervously. After you left, she came back. About an hour later. She looked different, worried. She talked to the manager for a long time in his office. Mrs. Carter leaned forward. Tell her the rest. The manager, he's my cousin. He told me later that the woman claimed someone had forced her to make that withdrawal. That someone had threatened her. She wanted to file a report, but she said she needed time to think about it. The pieces were falling into place now. Jasmine had withdrawn her own money with Simone as an unwitting witness. Then she'd gone back to plant the seed that she'd been forced to do it. When the time was right, she'd accused Simone of the theft. Why would she do this? Simone asked, though part of her already knew. Mrs. Carter sighed. Because she needed that money for something else, and she needed someone to blame when the family found out it was gone. Better to destroy your marriage than admit she'd spent her son's surgery fund. But the surgery is paid for. The doctor's office said Derek's mother paid. Which means Jasmine never intended for Malik to suffer. She just needed time to figure out how to replace the money. Your marriage was just collateral damage. Simone felt rage building in her chest, hot and righteous. Not just for herself, but for Derek, who was being manipulated by his own sister. For their community, who would have rallied around Jasmine if she'd just been honest about needing help. We need proof, Simone said. Tomas, would you be willing to tell Derek what you told me? The young man nodded seriously. My cousin, he might have security footage too. Banks keep everything for at least 30 days. As they talked, Simone noticed a little girl peeking around the corner of Mrs. Carter's house. She had pigtails and curious eyes, and she kept staring at the group on the porch. That's my granddaughter, Destiny, Mrs. Carter said, following Simone's gaze. Destiny, come here, baby. The 7-year-old approached shyly, staying close to her grandmother's side. Destiny was playing in the yard last week when you went to visit Jasmine, Mrs. Carter said. Tell Miss Simone what you saw. The lady with the braids was crying on her phone, Destiny said in a small voice. She was in her car after the pretty nurse lady left. She kept saying, I'm sorry to someone. Another piece of the puzzle. Jasmine had been upset after Simone left, probably already feeling guilty about what she was planning to do. We have witnesses, we have timeline evidence, and we might have security footage, Mrs. Carter summarized. But most importantly, we have the truth. Now we just need to get Derek to listen to it. Simone looked across the street at her house, where the porch light was off and Derek's truck sat silent in the driveway. Tomorrow was Saturday. She would make him listen whether he wanted to or not. Saturday morning arrived gray and drizzling, matching Simone's mood as she stood on her own front porch, gathering courage to ring the doorbell. The irony wasn't lost on her, needing permission to enter the home she'd helped make into a sanctuary of love and warmth. Derek answered the door in his weekend clothes, a Georgia Tech t-shirt and jeans that Simone had washed 100 times. His eyes were red-rimmed and tired, like he hadn't slept much either. "What do you want, Simone?" "I want you to listen to the truth." "5 minutes, Derek. You owe me that much after 3 years of marriage." He hesitated, his hand still on the door frame like a barrier between them. "I saw the bank records, Simone. I saw your name. As a witness, not a thief. Please. 5 minutes. Derek stepped aside reluctantly, and Simone entered the home that still smelled like the vanilla candles she'd lit every evening. The house felt different now, colder somehow, even though everything looked exactly the same. They sat on opposite ends of the couch where they'd watched movies and planned their future. The distance between them felt like an ocean. "Derek, I need you to call your mother and ask her how she paid for Malik's surgery." "My mother?" Derek frowned. "What does she have to do with this?" "Just call her. Please." Derek dialed, putting the phone on speaker. His mother's voice filled the room, warm and familiar. "Derek, baby, how are you? I heard about you and Simone." "I'm so sorry, son." "Mama, I need to ask you something. How did you manage to pay for Malik's surgery?" "I thought Jasmine needed to raise the money." There was a pause. "Son, I got worried when Jasmine seemed so stressed about the money, so I went ahead and paid it myself. Used some of my retirement savings. I was going to tell the family at Sunday dinner tomorrow." Derek's face went pale. "But Jasmine said someone stole the money she'd saved for it." "What money?" "Derek, honey, Jasmine never had that kind of money saved. She's been struggling since Marcus left. I've been helping her with rent for months." The phone nearly slipped from Derek's hands. Simone watched as understanding began to dawn on his face, followed quickly by horror. "Mama, I'll call you back." After he hung up, the silence stretched between them like a chasm. Derek put his head in his hands, his shoulders beginning to shake. "Oh God, Simone. What have I done?" Before Simone could respond, there was a knock at the door. Through the window, they could see Jasmine standing on the porch, holding a covered dish and wearing what looked like a carefully practiced expression of concern. "She's here," Derek said, his voice hollow. "She came to check on me probably. To make sure I was still angry at you." "Let her in," Simone said quietly. "It's time for the truth to come out." Derek opened the door, and Jasmine stepped inside with a performance-worthy smile. "Hey, big brother. I brought you some." She stopped short when she saw Simone on the couch. "What is she doing here?" "Sitting in her own home," Derek said, his voice dangerous. "Jasmine, we need to talk." Jasmine's eyes darted between Derek and Simone could see the moment when she realized her carefully constructed lie was crumbling. "Derek, you can't seriously be listening to her. She stole from Malik." "Mama paid for Malik's surgery," Derek said simply. "She paid for it with her retirement money because she was worried about you. So tell me, sister, what happened to the money that was supposedly stolen?" Jasmine's face went through a series of expressions: surprise, fear, defiance, and finally, crumbling defeat. She sank into Derek's armchair like her legs couldn't hold her anymore. "I needed it," she whispered. "I was 3 months behind on rent. Marcus left me with nothing and I was about to lose the apartment. Malik and I were going to be homeless." "So you stole from your own son's medical fund?" Derek's voice was rising. "And then you blamed my wife?" "I was going to pay it back." Jasmine's voice cracked. "I just needed time. I got a second job, I was saving every penny. But then Mama said she'd already paid for the surgery and I panicked. I knew you'd find out about the missing money and I—" She looked at Simone with desperate eyes. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never meant for it to go this far." "You destroyed my marriage," Derek said, standing up. "You made me throw the woman I love out of her own home. You made me believe she was a thief who would steal from a sick child." Simone watched her husband's anguish and felt her own anger mixing with a deep sadness. This wasn't just about the money or the lies. This was about family, trust, and how desperation could make people do terrible things. "Why didn't you just ask for help?" Simone asked quietly. "Derek would have helped you. I would have helped you. Our church would have helped you." Jasmine was crying now, her carefully constructed facade completely gone. "I was too ashamed. I was supposed to be the responsible one, the good mother. I couldn't admit I'd failed that badly." Derek began pacing, his hands clenched into fists. "So instead of asking for help, you decided to destroy Simone's reputation? You were willing to let everyone in our community think she was a thief. I thought you'd forgive her eventually. I thought she was strong enough to handle it. But I was desperate, Derek. I was about to lose everything. And instead you made me lose everything, Derek said, turning to look at Simone. The best thing that ever happened to me, and I threw it away because I believed my sister's lies. Simone felt her heart breaking all over again, not just for herself, but for the pain she could see in Derek's eyes. He was learning that the sister he'd trusted his whole life had manipulated him, had used his love for his family against him. I need you to leave, Derek said to Jasmine, his voice cold. I need you to leave, and I need you to think about what you've done. Not just to me and Simone, but to yourself. To your own son. Jasmine stood up slowly, her face streaked with tears. Derek, please. We're family. Family doesn't do what you did, Derek said. Not to each other and not to innocent people. After Jasmine left, Derek and Simone sat in their living room, surrounded by the wreckage of broken trust and shattered assumptions. The truth was out, but the damage felt overwhelming. I don't know how to fix this, Derek said finally. I don't know how to fix what I've done to you. Simone looked at her husband, really looked at him. She could see the man she'd fallen in love with, but she could also see how much he'd changed in just 2 days. The certainty he'd always carried was gone, replaced by doubt and regret. We start with honesty, she said. No more assumptions. No more taking anyone's word over our own knowledge of each other. Can you forgive me? He asked, his voice breaking. I don't know yet, Simone said honestly. But I want to try. Sunday morning found Simone sitting in the front pew of New Hope Baptist Church, listening to Pastor Helen Brooks deliver a sermon about forgiveness and redemption. Derek sat 3 rows behind her, having arrived separately, and the space between them felt like a canyon of hurt and uncertainty. Forgiveness, Pastor Brooks said, her voice carrying across the sanctuary, is not about forgetting what was done to you. It's about choosing not to let the pain define your future. After service, Pastor Brooks approached Simone in the church parking lot. She was a woman in her mid-40s who had shepherded the congregation through countless family crises with wisdom and grace. Simone, child, I heard about what happened with you and Derek. Would you and your husband be willing to sit down with me this week? Sometimes an outside perspective can help when family hurts run deep. Simone glanced back to see Derek walking slowly toward his truck, his shoulders bent with the weight of his regret. I don't know if he'd agree to that, Pastor. I already asked him, Pastor Brooks said gently. He said yes immediately. That man knows he made a terrible mistake, Simone. The question is whether you both have the courage to do the hard work of rebuilding what was broken. That afternoon, Simone found herself back at her mother's house, helping Ruby prepare Sunday dinner. It was a tradition they'd maintained for years, but today it felt different. Today she wasn't just visiting, she was still displaced from her own home. Have you thought about what you want? Ruby asked as they seasoned the chicken together. Not what Derek wants, not what the family expects, but what you want for your life? It was a question Simone had been avoiding. The immediate crisis of being falsely accused had overshadowed the deeper question of whether their marriage could survive such a fundamental breach of trust. I want my husband back, Simone said slowly. But I want the man who believes in me, not the man who would throw me out based on someone else's word. Those might be 2 different men, baby girl. You need to figure out which one Derek really is. Mrs. Carter arrived for dinner with little Destiny in tow, and Tomas Rivera joined them as well. Ruby had extended the invitation after learning that the young security guard was new to Atlanta and had no family nearby. Miss Simone, Destiny said as they sat around the dining table, are you going to live here forever now? I don't know, sweetie. I'm taking it one day at a time. My mama says when grown-ups fight, sometimes they need time to remember how to be nice to each other again. Out of the mouths of babes, Simone thought. Maybe Destiny had summed up the situation better than any of the adults had managed. Tomas, Mrs. Carter said, tell them about the security footage. Tomas wiped his mouth carefully before speaking. My cousin, he pulled the bank cameras from last week. They show Jasmine making the withdrawal with you waiting by the door, Miss Simone. Then they show her coming back alone an hour later, very upset. The manager, he wrote a report about her claiming she was forced to withdraw the money. Would that be enough evidence if Derek needed proof for a legal separation or anything? Ruby asked. Mama? Simone was shocked by the suggestion. I'm just saying, baby, you need to protect yourself. This situation has already shown that sometimes the people we trust most can hurt us the deepest. As if summoned by their conversation, Derek's truck pulled into the driveway. Through the window they could see him sitting behind the wheel, seeming to gather courage. I'll talk to him, Simone said, standing up. She found Derek leaning against his truck, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. Up close, she could see that he'd lost weight in just the few days since their world had exploded. "I came to ask if you'd consider coming home," he said without preamble. "Not to fix everything overnight, but just to be in the same house again. I miss you, Simone. I miss us." "Derek, I can't just pretend this didn't happen. You believed I was capable of stealing from a sick child. You threw me out without even giving me a chance to defend myself." I know, and I hate myself for it. But Jasmine, she had bank records with your name on them. She was crying, talking about Malik's surgery being cancelled. I reacted instead of thinking. "That's exactly the problem," Simone said. "In 3 years of marriage, have I ever given you reason to think I would do something like that?" Derek was quiet for a long moment. "No, you haven't. You've been nothing but generous and kind and honest. I should have known better. You should have known me better. You're right. I failed you as a husband. I failed us as a couple. But Simone, please don't let my sister's lies destroy what we built together." Simone looked back at the house where her mother, Mrs. Carter, Tomas, and little Destiny were probably listening through the window. These people had rallied around her when her own husband had abandoned her. They had believed in her innocence when the person who was supposed to love her most had not. "I'll come home," she said finally. "But we're going to counseling with Pastor Brooks. And Derek? This can never happen again. Not with Jasmine, not with anyone. If someone accuses me of something, you come to me first. Always." "Always," Derek agreed, and for the first time in days, Simone saw hope in his eyes. As they drove separately back to their house, Simone felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. She was going home, but home would never feel quite the same. The foundation of trust they built their marriage on had cracks now, and it would take time and work to determine if it could be repaired or if it would need to be rebuilt entirely. Walking back into her own home felt surreal. Everything was exactly as she'd left it, but the energy felt different, tentative, fragile, like a house of cards that could collapse with one wrong move. Derek had cleaned obsessively. The floors gleamed, the dishes sparkled, and fresh flowers sat on the kitchen table. White lilies, her favorite. It was a peace offering, an apology written in domestic gestures. "I put your things back in the bedroom," Derek said awkwardly. "And I took down the picture from the hallway." Simone looked where their wedding photo used to hang. The wall looked naked without it, but she understood. That picture represented a version of their marriage that no longer existed. "We'll put up a new one someday," she said carefully. "When we've earned it." They moved around each other like polite strangers for the first few days. Derek left for work early, came home late, and spoke in careful, measured sentences. Simone threw herself into her hospital shifts and spent her free time reading marriage counseling books she checked out from the library. Their first session with Pastor Brooks was scheduled for Thursday evening. They sat in her office, a warm, book-lined room that smelled like coffee and hope, with a careful space between them on the couch. "I want to start with you, Derek," Pastor Brooks said. "Tell me about the moment you decided to believe Jasmine's accusation." Derek shifted uncomfortably. She had evidence. Bank records, withdrawal slips. And she was so upset, crying about Malik's surgery being in jeopardy. "But you didn't verify that evidence independently?" "No. I trusted my sister. We grew up together. She's never lied to me before." "That you know of," Pastor Brooks corrected gently. "Derek, what did your reaction tell Simone about your view of her character?" The question hung in the air like a weight. Derek looked at his hands, then at Simone, then back at his hands. "That I didn't really know her. That I didn't trust her. That I believed she was capable of something terrible." "Simone, how did that feel?" "Like 3 years of marriage meant nothing," Simone said, her voice steady but carrying deep hurt. "Like all the love I'd shown him, all the ways I'd proven my character, could be erased by one accusation from someone else." Pastor Brooks nodded. "Derek, when someone you love is accused of wrongdoing, what should your first instinct be? To protect them. To find out the truth. To give them the benefit of the doubt. And what was your first instinct?" Derek's voice cracked. "To punish her. To get her away from me before she could hurt me more." "Why do you think that was?" The question opened something in Derek that he'd been keeping locked away. "Because my father left when I was 8. He stole money from my mother and disappeared. I swore I'd never let anyone do that to me again." Simone stared at her husband. In 3 years of marriage, he'd never connected his father's abandonment to his fear of being betrayed. She'd known his father had left, but Derek had always presented it as ancient history that didn't affect him. So when Jasmine presented evidence that Simone had stolen money, it triggered your deepest fear, Pastor Brooks observed. "I panicked," Derek admitted. I felt like that 8-year-old boy again watching my father pack his bags. I couldn't think straight. Derek, Simone said softly, why didn't you ever tell me you were afraid I'd leave you? Because strong men aren't supposed to be afraid, Derek said, his voice barely above a whisper. Because I thought if I never gave you a reason to doubt me, you'd never want to leave. But then you gave me a reason to doubt you, Simone pointed out. You threw me away the moment someone told you to. The session continued for another hour, peeling back layers of hurt and misunderstanding. By the time they left, both Derek and Simone felt emotionally drained but somehow lighter, as if finally naming their deepest fears had reduced their power. That night, they lay in their bed with careful space between them. They'd been sleeping in the same room but hadn't touched beyond accidental brushes when reaching for the alarm clock. Simone. Derek's voice was quiet in the darkness. Yeah. I know sorry isn't enough. But I need you to know that throwing you out was the worst thing I've ever done. Worse than anything my father did to us because at least he was honest about being selfish. I hurt you while claiming to love you. Simone turned to face him in the dark. Derek, I need to know that if something like this happens again, not exactly this but any crisis where we're being pulled in different directions, I need to know you'll choose us first. I will. I swear to you I will. And I need to know you'll get help for the fear about being abandoned. Because I can't spend our marriage trying to prove I'm not your father. I'll talk to Pastor Brooks about it. Maybe some individual counseling too. It wasn't a magical healing moment. They didn't fall into each other's arms or make passionate love. But it was a beginning, the first honest conversation they'd had since their world had fallen apart. Outside their bedroom window, Mrs. Carter's porch light was still on, a beacon of the community support that had carried Simone through her darkest days. Tomorrow she would call Mrs. Carter and thank her again. But tonight she was home, working on building something stronger from the pieces of what had been broken. 2 weeks after the truth came out, Simone was surprised to find Jasmine waiting by her car after her shift at the hospital. Derek's sister looked thinner, older somehow, as if the weight of what she'd done had aged her rapidly. Please don't call Derek, Jasmine said immediately. I need to talk to you. To apologize properly. Simone studied the woman who had nearly destroyed her marriage. Jasmine's eyes were red-rimmed and her clothes looked like she'd slept in them. 5 minutes, Simone said. I lost my job, Jasmine said without preamble. Word got around about what I did, and they said they couldn't trust someone who would lie about theft. I'm 3 weeks behind on rent again, and Malik keeps asking why Uncle Derek won't talk to us anymore. Simone felt a complicated mix of anger and pity. What do you want from me, Jasmine? I want to know how to fix this. I want to know how to get my family back. You can't, Simone said bluntly. You can't undo what you did. You destroyed trust, you hurt people who loved you, and you taught your son that lying is acceptable when you're desperate. Jasmine flinched as if she'd been slapped. So that's it? I made one mistake and I lose everything forever? One mistake. Simone's voice rose. Jasmine, you didn't accidentally say something hurtful or forget an important date. You deliberately planned to destroy my reputation to cover up your own problems. You looked my husband in the eye and lied to him about his wife. That's not a mistake, that's a betrayal. I know. But I was desperate. So were we, Simone interrupted. Derek and I struggled financially too. But we worked extra shifts, we budgeted, we asked family for help when we needed it. We didn't steal from sick children and frame innocent people. Jasmine was crying now, but Simone felt no sympathy. She'd cried plenty of tears herself over the past few weeks. What can I do? Jasmine whispered. Tell me what I can do to make this right. Simone thought about it seriously. What would true accountability look like? What would actually begin to repair the damage Jasmine had caused? First, you need to call everyone you told about the theft and tell them the truth. Every family member, every friend, every person who now thinks I'm a thief, you need to set the record straight. Okay. Yes, I can do that. Second, you need to get counseling. Real counseling, not just church counseling. You need to figure out why you thought destroying other people was an acceptable solution to your problems. Jasmine nodded eagerly. Third, you need to pay Derek back every penny you stole. I don't care if it takes you years. You stole from your family's trust fund, and you need to make that right. But I lost my job. Then you get another job. 2 jobs. 3 jobs if that's what it takes. You figure it out the honest way this time. And then Derek will forgive me? Simone shook her head. I can't promise you that. Forgiveness isn't something you earn by checking items off a list. It's something people give when they're ready, if they're ever ready. Derek may never trust you again, Jasmine. You need to accept that possibility. But we're family. Family doesn't do what you did, Simone said, echoing Derek's words from that terrible confrontation. You chose to hurt your family to protect yourself. Now you have to live with the consequences. After Jasmine left, Simone sat in her car for a long time, processing the conversation. She felt no satisfaction from Jasmine's obvious misery, but she also felt no obligation to make it easier for her. Some lessons could only be learned the hard way. That evening she told Derek about the encounter. They were cooking dinner together, a small ritual they'd started as part of rebuilding their daily connection. She asked me how to get you to forgive her, Simone said as she chopped vegetables. Derek's hands stilled on the chicken he was seasoning. What did you tell her? That forgiveness can't be demanded or earned through a checklist. That she might have permanently damaged your relationship. Good. Because she did. Derek's voice was flat. I keep thinking about all the times she could have told me the truth. All the opportunities she had to stop the lie from growing. Instead, she chose to let me destroy my marriage rather than admit what she'd done. Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive her? Derek was quiet for a long moment. Maybe someday. But forgiveness doesn't mean going back to the way things were. She's shown me who she really is when she's desperate. I can't unknow that. Later that evening, Mrs. Carter called with news. Simone, honey, I wanted you to know that Jasmine came by earlier. She told me the truth about what she did, apologized for involving the whole neighborhood in her lies. How did that feel? Honestly? Too little too late. But it's a start. And Simone? That girl is broken in ways that go deeper than just money problems. I hope she gets the help she needs for little Malik's sake if nothing else. That night, as Simone and Derek settled into bed, they were closer than they'd been since the crisis started. Not touching yet, but close enough that she could feel the warmth of his body next to hers. We're going to make it, aren't we? Derek asked quietly. I think so, Simone said. It's going to be different than before. But maybe different can be better. I love you, Derek said. I know I haven't earned the right to say that yet, but I need you to know it's true. I love you too, Simone replied. That was never the question. The question was whether love was enough to rebuild trust. And? Ask me again in a few months. It wasn't the passionate reconciliation that movies promised, but it was honest. And honesty, Simone was learning, was the only foundation strong enough to build a lasting marriage on. 3 months later, Simone woke up to the smell of pancakes and coffee drifting from the kitchen. She found Derek at the stove, wearing the apron she'd bought him for Christmas. The one that said, "Kiss the cook," that he'd initially claimed was too silly to wear. What's the occasion? She asked, accepting the mug of coffee he handed her. No occasion. Just felt like spoiling my wife. The word wife still sent a small thrill through her. For a while, she hadn't been sure she'd ever feel comfortable claiming that title again. But slowly, week by week, they'd been rebuilding their marriage into something stronger than what they'd had before. Mrs. Carter called, Derek said, flipping pancakes with practiced ease. She wants to know if we'll come to Destiny's birthday party on Saturday. Something about you being her favorite grown-up friend. Simone smiled. Little Destiny had become a bright spot in their lives, often running over after school to share stories about her day or ask Simone to help with homework. The 7-year-old's unconditional affection had been healing in ways Simone hadn't expected. Of course we'll go. What 7-year-old wants for her birthday? According to Mrs. Carter, a nurse kit so she can be just like Miss Simone. The simple statement made Simone's eyes well up. After months of questioning her worth and reputation, having a child look up to her felt like a precious gift. Derek noticed her tears and immediately moved to her side. Physical affection had returned gradually to their relationship. First holding hands during counseling sessions, then brief hugs, then longer embraces. Last week, they'd made love for the first time since the crisis, and it had felt like coming home. Hey, what's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Everything's right. That's still taking some getting used to. Their counseling sessions with Pastor Brooks had evolved from crisis management to actual growth. They'd learned to fight fairly, to voice needs clearly, and to check in with each other regularly about fears and concerns. Derek had also started individual therapy to address his abandonment issues, while Simone had begun working with a counselor to process the trauma of being falsely accused and rejected by her husband. Dr. Foster called yesterday, Simone said as they sat down to breakfast. She wants to promote me to charge nurse for the evening shift. That's amazing. You've wanted that position for 2 years. I know. But it would mean more responsibility, longer hours sometimes. I wanted to make sure you're okay with it before I say yes. It was a small thing but significant. Before the crisis, Simone might have just accepted the promotion and figured Derek would adjust. Now they discussed major decisions together, making sure both of their needs were considered. Of course I'm okay with it. You've worked hard for this opportunity. And you're sure it won't trigger any fears about me being too independent or successful? Derek was quiet for a moment, considering the question seriously. This was another change. They could discuss his fears openly now without him feeling attacked or defensive. Honestly, there's a tiny voice in my head that whispers stupid things sometimes. But that's my issue to manage, not yours to limit your career for. I'm proud of you, Simone. I want you to take the promotion. That afternoon, Simone was weeding their front flower bed when she noticed a familiar car pull up across the street. Jasmine got out, but instead of approaching Simone's house, she walked up to Mrs. Carter's porch. Simone watched as the older woman came to the door, spoke briefly with Jasmine, then invited her inside. About an hour later, Jasmine emerged looking emotionally drained but somehow lighter. Mrs. Carter walked across the street to where Simone was still gardening. That girl's been coming by once a week for the past month, Mrs. Carter said without preamble. Apologizing to everyone she lied to, trying to make things right. How's that going? Mixed results. Some folks are ready to forgive, others aren't. But she's doing the work, I'll give her that. Have you seen Malik lately? Mrs. Carter's expression softened. Poor baby's been staying with his grandmother while Jasmine works 3 jobs to pay back what she stole. He asks about Uncle Derek all the time. Simone felt a familiar pang of guilt. Malik was innocent in all of this, but he was paying the price for his mother's choices. Derek still won't see him? Can't blame him for protecting himself. But that little boy didn't do anything wrong. That evening, Simone brought up the subject with Derek. They were working in their garden together, another new routine they'd established. Physical work side by side had become a form of meditation for them. Mrs. Carter says Malik has been asking about you. Derek's hand stilled on the tomato plant he was staking. I know. Mama told me the same thing. How does that feel? Terrible. I love that kid. But every time I think about seeing him, I remember how Jasmine used him as a weapon against us. She was willing to let him think someone stole his surgery money just to cover her tracks. What if you could see Malik without seeing Jasmine? Your mother's house maybe? Derek considered this. You think that would be okay? For him, I mean. I think a little boy needs his uncle. And I think you need him too. That weekend, after Destiny's birthday party, Derek called his mother and arranged to see Malik. Simone watched from the kitchen window as Derek's nephew ran into his arms, both of them crying happy tears. It wasn't forgiveness for Jasmine. Derek was clear about that boundary. But it was grace for an innocent child who had lost his uncle along with everything else. It was growth, healing, and the slow work of rebuilding a family that had been shattered by lies. How did it go? Simone asked when Derek came inside. He's taller. And he has questions about why his mama cries all the time now. What did you tell him? That sometimes grown-ups make mistakes that hurt people they love. That his mama is trying to fix her mistakes but it takes time. And that no matter what happens between the grown-ups, I will always love him. That's perfect. Derek nodded, but his expression was thoughtful. Simone, I've been thinking about something. About forgiveness and accountability and what it means to be a family. What about it? I may never trust Jasmine again. But I don't want to spend the rest of my life carrying anger around. Not for her sake but for mine. For ours. What does that look like? I don't know yet. But I think it starts with accepting that she's Malik's mother and I'm his uncle, and somehow we have to figure out how to coexist for his sake. It wasn't reconciliation. It wasn't even forgiveness yet. But it was the beginning of something healthier than the rage and hurt that had defined their family for months. That night, as they settled into bed, Derek pulled Simone close against his side. She rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. I have something to tell you, Derek said, his voice rumbling in his chest. What? I bought a new frame for our wedding picture. If you're ready, I'd like to hang it back up. Simone lifted her head to look at him. Are we ready for that? I think so. Not because we're the same people who took that picture, but because we're better people now. We've earned the right to call ourselves married again. The next morning, they hung their wedding photo back in the hallway. They looked young and naive in the picture, blissfully unaware of the trials that would test their love. But now, looking at it, Simone didn't see innocence, she saw potential. The potential to grow, to forgive, to become stronger together than they ever were apart. 6 months after the crisis that nearly destroyed their marriage, Simone stood in the church kitchen helping Ruby and Mrs. Carter prepare food for the community potluck dinner. It was a tradition that brought together their entire neighborhood, and this year, it felt especially meaningful. "Hand me that casserole dish, baby girl," Ruby said, elbow deep in mac and cheese preparation. "And tell me how things are going with you and Derek." "Good, Mama. Really good. We had our last official counseling session with Pastor Brooks this week." Mrs. Carter looked up from the green beans she was snapping. "Last session? Does that mean you're all healed up?" Simone laughed. "Pastor Brooks says we've learned the tools we need to keep working on our marriage. The real test is whether we can use them without someone guiding us through it." "And how do you feel about that?" Ruby asked. "Confident. Different than I felt 6 months ago, but confident." Through the kitchen window, Simone could see Derek setting up tables in the church hall with Tomas Rivera, who had become a regular part of their community since that difficult time. The young security guard had proven to be not just a key witness to the truth, but a loyal friend who brought joy and energy to their neighborhood gatherings. "That Derek of yours has been looking at engagement rings again," Mrs. Carter said casually, not looking up from her beans. "What?" Simone nearly dropped the dish she was carrying. "Don't get excited, child. He's not proposing again. But he told Pastor Brooks he wants to renew your vows on your 4th wedding anniversary next month. Asked her to help him plan it." Simone felt her heart flutter. She and Derek had talked about wanting to mark their journey back to each other, but she hadn't expected this. "He wants it to be a community celebration," Mrs. Carter continued. "Everyone who helped hold you up during the worst time. He said he wants to thank the people who believed in you when he couldn't." Ruby smiled broadly. Now that sounds like a man who's learned something about the value of his wife and his community. Later that evening, after the potluck dishes were cleared and the church hall was restored to order, Derek walked Simone to their car. But instead of getting in, he took her hand and led her to the small garden behind the church where they'd taken their original wedding photos. "I have something to ask you," Derek said, his voice nervous but determined. "Derek Turner, if you're about to get down on one knee in this dress-up outfit, you better have a good reason." He laughed, the sound warm and familiar. "I have the best reason in the world." To Simone's surprise, he did get down on one knee, pulling out a small velvet box. "Simone Davis Turner, I married you 4 years ago thinking I knew what love meant. I thought it meant finding someone who would never hurt me, never challenge me, never make me face my own brokenness." Simone's eyes filled with tears as she realized what was happening. But real love isn't about avoiding pain. It's about choosing to grow through pain together. It's about trusting that the person you've chosen to build a life with will choose you back, even when things get difficult. Derek opened the box, revealing a simple diamond band that would fit perfectly next to her original wedding ring. "I can't give you back the 6 months we lost to lies and fear. But I can promise you that for the rest of our lives, I will choose you first. I will trust you first. I will defend you first. Will you marry me again? Not as the naive young people we were, but as the strong, tested people we've become." Simone looked down at her husband, really looked at him. The boy who had fallen in love with her 4 years ago had been replaced by a man who understood the weight of commitment. The man who had thrown her belongings on the porch in a fit of betrayed rage had been replaced by someone who knew that love was a choice you made every day. "Yes," she said, holding out her left hand. "Yes, I'll marry you again." As Derek slipped the ring onto her finger, Simone felt a completion she hadn't expected. Not the completion of a fairy tale romance, but the completion of a difficult journey that had tested everything they thought they knew about love and come out stronger. "There's one more thing," Derek said, standing and pulling her close. "I called Jasmine yesterday." Simone stiffened slightly. Jasmine had been working steadily to make amends. She'd paid back half of the money she'd stolen, completed a counseling program, and secured stable employment. But Derek had maintained minimal contact, interacting with her only when necessary for Malik's sake. "What did you tell her?" "I told her that I've decided to forgive her." Simone searched his face. "Have you really?" "I'm working on it. But I realized that carrying anger was like holding on to poison and expecting it to hurt her. I can forgive her and still maintain boundaries. I can forgive her and still protect our marriage." How did she respond? "She cried. And she thanked me. And then she said something that surprised me." "What?" "She said she's grateful that her lies got exposed when they did, because living with that secret was killing her. She said watching us rebuild our marriage has given her hope that she can rebuild her own life." As they drove home, Simone reflected on the strange ways that truth and healing could emerge from even the darkest betrayals. Jasmine's lies had nearly destroyed their marriage, but working through the aftermath had made them stronger than they'd ever been before. Derek. Yeah. I want Jasmine to be at our vow renewal. Derek glanced at her in surprise. Are you sure? I'm sure. Not because I've forgiven her completely, but because our story includes her now. The way we survived what she did to us is part of who we are as a couple. I want our community to see that healing is possible, even after betrayal. Derek reached over and took her hand, his thumb brushing over her new ring. Have I mentioned lately that you're an amazing woman? Only every day for the past month. Good. I plan to keep doing that for the next 50 years. As they pulled into their driveway, Simone saw Mrs. Carter on her porch with little Destiny, both of them waving enthusiastically. These neighbors who had become family, this community that had held her up when her world fell apart, they were as much a part of her love story as Derek was. Welcome home, Mrs. Turner, Derek said, helping her out of the car. It's good to be home, Mr. Turner. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, home felt exactly like where she belonged. 1 month later, on a warm Saturday afternoon in early October, New Hope Baptist Church was decorated with white roses and golden ribbons for Derek and Simone's vow renewal ceremony. The same sanctuary where they'd worshiped together, where they'd sought counseling, where their community had prayed for their healing, would now witness their commitment to love each other with the hard-earned wisdom of people who had walked through fire together. Simone stood in the church's bridal room, surrounded by the women who had carried her through her darkest hours. Ruby was adjusting the simple white dress they'd chosen together, while Mrs. Carter fastened a necklace that had belonged to her own grandmother. You look beautiful, baby girl, Ruby said, stepping back to admire her daughter. But more than that, you look happy. Really, truly happy. I am, Mama. I feel like I'm marrying the man Derek was always meant to become. Pastor Brooks appeared in the doorway, radiant in her ceremonial robes. It's time, Simone. Derek is waiting for you, and let me tell you, that man looks like he's about to burst with pride. As they processed into the sanctuary, Simone was overwhelmed by the sight that greeted her. The church was full, not just with family but with their entire community. Hospital colleagues sat next to church members. Neighbors filled the pews alongside Derek's co-workers. Even Tomas Rivera was there with his new girlfriend, beaming as if he were watching his own sister get married. And there, in the third row, sat Jasmine with little Malik. Jasmine looked different, thinner, more serious, but also somehow more genuine than Simone had ever seen her. When their eyes met, Jasmine mouthed thank you with tears in her eyes. But all of that faded when Simone saw Derek waiting for her at the altar. He wore a new suit, navy blue instead of the black from their original wedding, and his eyes held a depth of love and commitment that took her breath away. As she walked down the aisle, alone this time by her own choice, Simone thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment. The lies that had separated them, the truth that had reunited them, and the hard work that had transformed them both. Pastor Brooks began the ceremony with words that resonated through the sanctuary. We gather today not to witness a first marriage, but to celebrate a love that has been tested and refined. Derek and Simone have learned that love is not a feeling that happens to you, but a choice you make every day, especially on the days when choosing is difficult. When it came time for their vows, Derek spoke first, his voice strong and clear. Simone, when I married you 4 years ago, I promised to love you in good times and bad, in sickness and health, for richer or poorer. I thought I understood what those words meant. But I learned that truly loving someone means believing in their character even when circumstances seem to suggest otherwise. It means choosing trust over fear, even when fear feels safer. His voice wavered slightly as he continued. I failed you in the most fundamental way a husband can fail his wife. I allowed someone else's lies to make me doubt your integrity. I threw away 3 years of proof of your goodness because I was afraid of being hurt. Simone felt tears streaming down her face as Derek reached for her hands. Today I promise you not just love but trust. Not just commitment but faith. I promise to see you clearly, to defend you fiercely, and to choose our partnership over my fears always. When it was Simone's turn, she looked out at the congregation, at the faces of people who had shown her what community really meant, before focusing back on Derek. Derek, I've learned that forgiveness isn't about forgetting what happened or pretending it didn't hurt. Forgiveness is about choosing to build something new from the pieces of what was broken. You broke my heart, but you also did the work to earn my trust back. That's not something every person is willing to do. She squeezed his hands, feeling the weight of her new engagement ring alongside her original wedding band. I promise to continue choosing you not because you're perfect but because you're willing to grow. I promise to speak truth to you even when it's difficult to hear. And I promise to remember that we are stronger together than we are apart, especially when life tries to convince us otherwise. Pastor Brooks asked for the rings, and little Destiny Carter proudly stepped forward as their ring bearer, carrying Derek's new wedding band on a satin pillow. These rings represent not just your commitment to each other, but your commitment to the community that surrounds you, Pastor Brooks said. The people in this sanctuary are witnesses to your love, but they're also the support system that will help you honor these vows in the years to come. As Derek and Simone exchanged rings for the second time, the sanctuary erupted in applause. But the moment that brought tears to nearly every eye was when Derek lifted Simone's face to his and said, "Thank you for giving us a second chance." The reception was held in the church fellowship hall, transformed with the same golden ribbons and white roses. Instead of a formal wedding cake, Ruby had made dozens of her famous pound cakes, and the buffet table groaned under the weight of dishes contributed by the entire community. During the reception, Mrs. Carter stood to make a toast. "I've lived in this neighborhood for 40 years, she said, her voice carrying across the room. "I've seen couples come and go, I've watched love bloom and sometimes wither. But I've never seen two people fight harder to save their marriage than Derek and Simone Turner." She raised her glass of punch. "They've shown us all that real love isn't about never falling down. It's about helping each other get back up." Later in the evening, as the celebration was winding down, Jasmine approached the couple. She looked nervous but determined. "Derek, Simone, I just wanted to thank you for including me today. And I wanted you to know that I've paid back 3/4 of the money I stole. I'll have the rest to you by Christmas." "Jasmine," Derek said carefully, "I appreciate that. But I need you to know that while I've forgiven you, rebuilding trust is going to take time." "I understand. Seeing you two today, seeing how you've grown stronger after what I did to you, it gives me hope that maybe someday I can be the kind of person who builds things up instead of tearing them down." Simone surprised herself by reaching out to hug Jasmine. "You can be that person. You're already becoming that person. It just takes time and work." As the evening came to a close, Derek and Simone stood in the church parking lot, saying goodbye to the community that had carried them through their darkest time. Mrs. Carter was the last to leave, pressing a small wrapped package into Simone's hands. "What is this?" "Your wedding photo," Mrs. Carter said with a smile. "The one that got cracked when Derek threw your suitcase on the porch. I had it restored and reframed. Figured you might want to start fresh, but remember where you came from." Inside the package was their original wedding photo, the crack carefully repaired with gold leaf that made the mended line beautiful instead of hidden. "It's a Japanese art called kintsugi," Mrs. Carter explained. "They believe that when something is broken and repaired, it becomes more beautiful than it was before." As Derek and Simone drove home, the restored photo carefully secured in the back seat, they reflected on the journey that had brought them to this second wedding day. "Do you think we would have made it without all the help we got?" Simone asked. "No," Derek said honestly. "I think we would have stayed broken. It took a community to teach us how to love each other properly." "And do you think we're really healed now?" Derek considered the question seriously. "I think we're different now. Better. We know what we're capable of surviving together." As they pulled into their driveway, Simone noticed that someone had left flowers on their front porch, wildflowers picked from neighborhood gardens, with a note from Destiny Carter that read, "Congratulations on getting married again." Inside their house, Derek and Simone hung the restored wedding photo next to a new one from today's ceremony. Side by side, the photos told their complete story: young love and tested love, innocence and wisdom, breaking and healing. "I love you, Mrs. Turner," Derek said, pulling his wife into his arms. "I love you too, Mr. Turner." All over again. Outside their window, the neighborhood settled into evening quiet. Mrs. Carter's porch light glowed like a beacon, Tomas Rivera's laughter drifted from his apartment, and somewhere down the street, a baby was crying while being comforted by loving parents. It was the sound of community, of people choosing to care for each other despite their flaws and failures. It was the sound of home. Derek and Simone Turner had learned that love wasn't about finding someone who would never hurt you. Love was about finding someone who would do the work to heal what they had broken, who would choose growth over pride, who would fight for the relationship even when fighting felt impossible. They had learned that marriage wasn't a destination but a journey, not a trophy to be won but a garden to be tended. And they had learned that sometimes the most beautiful love stories are the ones that include chapters of forgiveness, redemption, and second chances. As they settled into bed on their second wedding night, wrapped in each other's arms and surrounded by the community that had helped save their marriage, Derek and Simone knew they were exactly where they belonged, not just with each other, but in a place where love was supported, truth was valued, and healing was always possible. Their story had started with a lie that nearly destroyed everything. But it ended with a truth that made them stronger than they'd ever dreamed possible. That real love, the kind worth fighting for, was not about being perfect together, but about being willing to grow together, one choice at a time, one day at a time, one forgiven hurt at a time, until what had been broken became something beautiful.